Thank you.
So basically, the very high level idea is that if you're lean and insulin sensitive and you switch from a mixed diet with carbs to a ketogenic diet, you really turn up the fat burning a lot. In fact, a lot more than somebody with obesity. You're liberating free fatty acids more. And what ends up happening is, so you imagine your fat tissue, maybe it's sitting over a muscle. Some free fatty acids are released. And maybe some get eaten by the muscle, but a lot of them go into circulation in your blood. Then they get picked up by the liver and need to get recirculated through the body. So they're packaged. You get these free fatty acids, and you kind of package them onto a backbone called glycerol, and you end up with this M-shaped molecule called triglycerides. And this is stored fat, but fat doesn't really go into aqueous solution water very well, right? You put oil on water, it doesn't mix. So you need to package it on a carrier particle, which is called a very low density lipoprotein, VLDL. That's shipped out of the liver, and the VLDL at your fat and your muscle is turned over, where this big sphere packed full with triglycerides, as the triglycerides sucked out of it to replenish fat cells and feed muscle. And what happens is, as you have this big sphere with the triglycerides in the center, and they're getting the triglycerides sucked out really quickly, the triglycerides go down. Okay, that's one part of the triad. The big sphere, VLDL, shrinks into a littler sphere, LDL. Okay, high LDL, that's two parts of the triad. And then the HDL goes up because as you shrink a sphere, you lose surface area. And some of the surface area gets shed off and includes cholesterol that gets picked up by HDL. So this model explains this lean mass hyperresponder triad and why people who are lean and insulin sensitive have skyrocketing LDL. But it makes very interesting predictions as well, because you can, pull levers on this model, things like increasing energy expenditure, holding other things constant, or adding back carbs, which basically shuts off the need for the cycle, right? Because the cycle is started by carb depletion in the liver. So your body's like, I need to burn more fat. Then just adding back carbs should slow the flywheel of the lipid energy model. So we'd showed this before in an interventional trial in case series. Many people have added back like fruits and starches in the quote healthy carbs. But I, at the time, was 27. I'm now 28. And being young, being passionate, well, the flip side of that is I'm incredibly impatient. Yeah. And we were having a lot of cool data come out, but people weren't talking about it to the level I thought they should be. I think the phenomena we're observing are fascinating, have so much to teach, medicine and science about metabolism in general. I'm like, look, people, you need to talk about this. People aren't talking about it. So then I'm like, all right, I'm going to force a conversation. So I don't have millions of dollars to do a giant study, at least not yet, but I do have creativity, a little bit of spunk. And I was thinking, what can I do to really force heads to turn and look at this interesting physiology? So I took the lipid energy model and studies that other people like my friend Dave Feldman had done before. And I'm like, I'm going to do this, but on steroids. And I envisioned this experiment where I would use Oreo cookies to lower my LDL, because I should be able to do that. If I go keto and lock in my diet and then add Oreo cookies by adding back carbs, just adding, not swapping, pure adding, I should drop my LDL. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to go bigger. So I thought, I'm going to compare it. What's a strong comparator? High dose statins, 20 mgs Crestor, 20 mgs rosuvastatin. And, I know how to dot my I's and cross my T's because I've been in academia long enough. So I got Harvard to give me my IRB exemption. My PCP was ordering all my labs straight into my electronic medical record.
Wow. Okay.
And I got a highly esteemed lipidologist to sign on as my partner on this project, William Cromwell, who trained Thomas Dayspring, who some people might know, who trained Peter Attia in lipids. So Peter Attia's lipid granddaddy, you could say. And I then announced that I was going to do this experiment on a YouTube channel called Plant Chompers. And then I executed. And the protocol exactly was I lock in my ketogenic diet. Then I eat Oreo cookies, 12 cookies per day for 100 grams of carbs for about 2 weeks. Ended up being 16 days for reasons I can explain in a moment. Then I had a washout period, 3 months, before I did 6 weeks of high-intensity statin therapy. And the results were that the Oreo intervention dropped my LDL by twice as much as the statin in 1/3 the time, consistent with the lipid energy model. Now, the statin had the expected effect, a 32.5% drop. It's just the Oreos were way more potent. They dropped my LDL by 71%, from 384 to 111 milligrams per deciliter in 16 days, which is stronger than any drug on the market.
Wow.
Including no lipid lowering drug is expected to have that effect. So I did that with Oreo cookies as predicted by our model, as consistent with their data. So then the question should be like, how'd you know this was going to work? Like, the physiology underlying this is fascinating, but it was a metabolic demonstration to prove a point that there's something quirky going on here. So I'll pause for questions, and then I'll like emphasize some of the takeaways.
So this, I mean, it did 100% fit your model of what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so essentially I noticed. So I actually did, I was on a lower carb diet for a long time.
Mhm.
And when I decided to really kick up the muscle gain and compete in bodybuilding again, I added in a lot of carbohydrate. And I noticed that my HDL was always fine. My LDL was slightly elevated. When I say slightly, like 140, right? It wasn't like 220 or 300. When I was off that, I got into the 170, 180 range. And then when I kicked back, now my LDL is like 100, somewhere in there. If I'm not, I could be misquoting, somewhere around 100. I remember it was around that area. So I noticed the same thing with my blood work. If you know about bodybuilders, especially, and I'm not a crazy drug using bodybuilder, but we're big on blood work. Bodybuilders are big on blood work. Not just the markers. We're big on testosterone, SHBG, all that stuff. So I get meticulous blood work done quite often. So I have seen that, and I had no idea about this model.
Yeah.
So now that it's because I was trying to figure out what the hell happened. I'm like, well, I was still eating I was eating clean foods. And that's fascinating. That explains a lot. It does make sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
So,
Alan, you got anything?
my follow-up question is this, right? Because the study, like the self-study you did, I think is amazing. And I to me, it just kind of shows that we should go to a much more preventative model and or lifestyle driven model for just about everything. But that's what that's what I talk about a lot. So, because frankly, you're showing that like lifestyle can actually produce better results. But why? So reality is, why don't we do that? And why do doctors have such limited nutritional training then?
So I think that's a question that I want to get to. I do want to emphasize a few more things about this study, because
Sure.
I mean, the intervention, like you were saying, a takeaway is you can get better results with lifestyle intervention, which is funny. I guess high level that could be a takeaway, but the lifestyle intervention was Oreo cookies, overeating Oreo cookies.
That means that even ultra processed foods are healthier than statins.
No, it doesn't.
Actually, no, I didn't get that at all, Alan. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to.
So I love.
That's me taking it to an extrapolation.
Okay.
But you produced better results even with shitty food than the statins produced.
But you're saying now, so here's the interesting thing is forgive me for pushing back a little bit, but I think you're conducting mental gymnastics in order to rationalize your pre-existing confirmation bias against statins. Because LDL is bad.
Yeah.
But your statement right now has the supposition that LDL is the quote bad cholesterol.
Can I interject?
No.
Can I interject what I got out of it? Because I think it'll bring it together. So I think what I got out of it is that LDL isn't necessarily the boogeyman. LDL is a byproduct of something. When LDL is elevated, it could be because it's just elevated for other environmental factors that aren't a contributor to bad health. If you enjoyed this video, you can see the entire podcast at rumble.com/evening rants. That's rumble.com/evening rants. See you there. For the past few months, I've been making the gains of my life. Never thought I'd be training this way, but I've taken all of the new data on hypertrophy and put it together. Not only am I making all these gains, I'm never terribly sore. I never feel run down. My energy's through the roof. I'm able to hike. I'm able to swim. I'll do everything I love. It doesn't cut into my life. I don't feel fatigued. I don't feel terrible, but I'm still making these crazy gains. It is the Superior Hypertrophy Training Book, and it is yours, and it is free. Go to superiorhypertrophy.com. That's superiorhypertrophy.com and start it today. You have nothing to lose. It's absolutely free. My gift to you. Now go make some damn gains.